Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
The silence in the council chamber was the kind that precedes storms. Ambassador Chen Wei stood motionless before the assembled representatives of 47 star systems, her hands clasped behind her back, her face a mask of diplomatic composure. But those who knew humanity, those few who had bothered to study the strange, soft-skinned species from the backwater system they called Sol, might have recognized the warning signs. The absolute stillness, the measured breathing, the way her dark eyes had gone flat and cold as the void between stars. She had just watched the evidence file, all 73 minutes of it. The Vorkan Empire's delegate, a towering creature of chitinous plates and too many joints, clicked his mandibles in what his species considered a dismissive gesture. The human raises concerns over labor redistribution protocols. This is hardly a matter for the Grand Council. The Vorkan Empire has operated within established guidelines for resource acquisition for 6 centuries. These specimens were obtained legally from contested border territories. Specimens, Chen repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Across the galaxy, in the underground bunkers of Earth's military command, General James Vorsek was watching the same transmission on a 17-second delay. He had also seen the evidence file. He had watched it 3 times, in fact, though he wished he could scrub it from his memory forever. The shaky footage captured by a smuggler's drone showing the processing facility on Vorkan Prime, the cages, the small hands reaching through bars, the auction blocks where children, human children, some no older than 5 or 6, were displayed like livestock. The smuggler who'd leaked the footage had included a manifest. 217 children, taken from the colony on Perseverance III during what the Vorkan had officially reported as a minor border skirmish. The colony itself had been listed as a total loss, all inhabitants presumed dead. That's what Earth had been told. That's what humanity had mourned for 3 months, but they weren't dead. They were worse than dead. Vorsek's hands trembled as he set down his coffee. Round him, the Joint Chiefs sat in similar states of barely controlled fury. Admiral Rodriguez had tears streaming down her face. General Xiao had broken his stylus in half without seeming to notice. "Give me options," Vorsek said quietly. Back in the council chamber, the Vorkan delegate was still speaking. Furthermore, the economic value generated by these acquisitions has been substantial. They are remarkably adaptable workers, capable of fitting into small spaces for mineral extraction operations. Their dexterity is quite useful. We have invested considerable resources in their accommodation. Accommodation, Chen said. The word came out like a bullet. A Zenthari observer, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns, spoke up. Her species was known for their strict adherence to galactic law. The protocols are clear, Ambassador Chen. Contested territories are outside council jurisdiction. Inhabitants of such territories are classified as unclaimed resources until formal sovereignty is established. It is unfortunate, but legal. Unclaimed resources, Chen took a step forward. Around the circular chamber, 47 delegates shifted uneasily. Humans were new to the galactic stage, barely 30 years since first contact. They were weak, their technology primitive, their military laughable compared to the great empires. They occupied one system, had colonies in 3 others, and possessed exactly 14 interstellar-capable warships. They were nobody. They were nothing. So why did several delegates feel a sudden primal urge to move away from the human ambassador? "Let me make sure I understand the Council's position," Chen said, her voice taking on a strange conversational tone that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. The Vorkan Empire attacked a human colony. They slaughtered the adults. They took the children, 217 children, the youngest being 4 years old, and sold them as slaves. And this is legal because the colony was in disputed space. The terminology slaves is inflammatory, the Vorkan delegate protested. They are contracted laborers. The distinction is important, is it? Chen smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I suppose to someone who's never been on the wrong end of a collar, the distinction might seem meaningful. She pulled out a small data chip and held it up. This contains Earth's formal response to the Council's position. I was instructed to present it diplomatically, to follow proper channels, to respect the complexity of galactic politics and the delicate balance of power that keeps the peace. The Zenthari observer nodded approvingly. That is wise. Rash action would be most— I decline, Chen interrupted. She crushed the data chip in her fist. Several delegates gasped at the casual display of what was, for a human, surprising grip strength. Here is Earth's actual response. You have 72 hours to return every single child to human custody, unharmed. Every single one. If even one is missing a finger, you will pay for it. If one has a bruise we can't account for, you will pay for it. If one is psychologically damaged beyond what our best therapist can heal, you will pay for it in ways that will make you wish you'd never evolved eyes to see with. The chamber erupted in outrage. The Vorkan delegate reared up to his full 3-meter height. You dare threaten the Vorkan Empire? You with your 14 ships and your one populated world? We have fleets that could sterilize your planet in an afternoon. We have warriors bred for conquest across 1,000 worlds. What do you have? Chen looked up at him, and in that moment every being in the chamber saw something that would haunt their dreams. They saw a predator. Not the largest predator, not the strongest, but the most relentless. The kind that used to hunt megafauna across frozen tundras, armed with nothing but sharpened stones and absolute refusal to quit. We have children to get back, she said simply, and we're very, very good at getting things done when we're motivated. 72 hours, starting now. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a council that was only just beginning to understand they had made a catastrophic error in judgment. What would you do if you were in Ambassador Chen's position? If you knew that following proper channels would take years, but that children were suffering right now? Could you maintain diplomatic composure, or would the fury consume you? Earth didn't wait 72 hours. 6 hours after Chen's ultimatum, the Vorkan Empire received a different kind of message. It wasn't transmitted through official council channels. It wasn't encoded in the standard diplomatic frequencies. It came through every single communications network the Vorkan used simultaneously. Military, civilian, commercial, even the private channels of the imperial family. It was a video message, and it lasted exactly 47 seconds. The speaker was a woman who looked like somebody's grandmother. Silver hair, weathered face, kind eyes behind antique spectacles. She wore a simple sweater. Behind her was a bookshelf filled with old Earth novels and framed photographs of smiling children. "Hello," she said pleasantly, in perfect Vorkan dialect. "My name is Dr. Elizabeth Huang, and I'm a kindergarten teacher from Seattle. I'm also, coincidentally, one of approximately 40 million humans who have volunteered for Operation Homecoming. We're not military. Most of us have never held a weapon. We're teachers, parents, grandparents, nurses, shopkeepers, accountants. Ordinary people. But here's what you need to understand about humans. We all remember being children. We all remember what it felt like to be small and scared and helpless. Every single one of us." Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes went hard as diamond. "So we've done some calculations. Vorkan Prime has a population of 14 billion. You have 73 industrial worlds and over 200 outposts. Your military consists of approximately 80 million active personnel. That's very impressive. Here's our calculation. Earth has 8 billion people. If even just 5% of us volunteered, and it's already well past that, we outnumber your military by a factor of 5 to 1. We don't need to win a war. We don't need to conquer your empire. We just need to get our children back." She picked up a piece of paper, adjusted her glasses and read from it. "This is a list of names and locations. Every Vorkan official, military officer and business leader involved in the acquisition and exploitation of human children. We know where you live. We know where your families live. We know your routines, your security protocols, your emergency procedures. We know this because we've spent the last 6 hours doing what humans do best. We've pooled our knowledge. Former intelligence analysts, cybersecurity experts, private investigators, and about 10,000 amateur internet sleuths have been working together. It's amazing what a motivated population can accomplish when they're properly angry." She set down the paper and leaned toward the camera. The grandmother was gone, replaced by something ancient and terrible. Every single person on this list, and everyone in their chain of command, has 66 hours to be on board a ship headed to the designated rendezvous point with our children. If you're wondering whether we're serious, we've already demonstrated our capabilities. Check your personal banking accounts. Check your private communications. Check the security systems in your homes. Across the Vorkan Empire, thousands of officials did exactly that. What they found made their blood run cold. Their bank accounts had been emptied. Not stolen, but transferred into escrow accounts with release conditions tied to the children's return. Their private communications had been downloaded and prepared for public release. Their home security systems had been overridden, with a single message displayed: "We could have done worse. This is a warning." "We're not trying to be cruel," Dr. Huang continued. "We're not interested in revenge yet. We just want our babies back. But make no mistake, if you harm them out of spite, if you hide them, if you make them suffer one more day than necessary, then we will demonstrate what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized. And I promise you, on behalf of 40 million volunteers and 8 billion people standing behind us, you don't want to see what we become when we stop holding back." The message ended. Aboard the Vorkan Imperial Command vessel Relentless Conquest, Supreme Commander Vashnek reviewed the message with a mixture of disbelief and rage. Around him, his command staff stood in uncomfortable silence. "This is absurd," Vashnek declared, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. "They're bluffing." "They must be. They're a minor species with minimal technological capacity. They have 14 ships. We've counted them ourselves. How do they expect to threaten the greatest empire in the galaxy?" His intelligence officer, a younger male with nervous energy, cleared his throat. "Commander, we've confirmed the breaches. They weren't bluffing about compromising our systems. The method they used is unprecedented. They didn't use any sophisticated AI or quantum hacking protocols. They used social engineering on a scale we've never encountered. They contacted lower-level employees, pretended to be technical support or internal auditors, and convinced them to provide access. Hundreds of thousands of separate contacts, all coordinated, all within hours. That's impossible," Vashnek said flatly. "That's what I thought too, sir. But apparently, humans have something they call crowdsourcing. They mobilized their entire population. Every person with technical knowledge, every former military intelligence operator, every corporate spy who's ever worked in digital security. They pooled their expertise and executed a coordinated information warfare campaign faster than our best cyber warfare divisions could mount. It's not sophisticated, it's just relentless and overwhelming." Vashnek's mandibles clicked in agitation. "They're still just soft-bodied mammals. Even if they can breach our data systems, they can't project military force across the galaxy. It's logistically impossible with their fleet." "About that, sir." The intelligence officer pulled up a holographic display. "We've detected unusual activity throughout human space. They're mobilizing their civilian fleet. Every cargo ship, every passenger liner, every private yacht, they're being volunteered or conscripted. Current estimates suggest they're assembling a fleet of over 70,000 vessels. Cargo ships." Vashnek's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "They're going to attack us with cargo ships?" "Not attack, sir, transport. They're creating a fleet capable of moving millions of personnel. They appear to be converting them into troop carriers. The humans are... They're actually doing it. They're mobilizing their entire civilian population for an invasion." The command deck fell silent. On the main display, images from human broadcasts showed the reality. Earth's orbital shipyards were running 24-hour operations. Every major city had recruitment centers, with lines stretching for blocks. Retirement homes were pooling resources to fund transportation. Schools had been converted to training facilities. It was total mobilization, happening at a speed that should have been impossible for a species that still had internal conflicts and divided governments. But the images showed something else too: unity. For the first time in their contentious history, humanity had found something that made their differences irrelevant. Every nation, every faction, every ideological group had set aside their disputes. The footage showed a Muslim family embracing a Christian family, both with children who'd attended the same school as the kids from Perseverance the Through. It showed Chinese and American engineers working side by side. It showed 100 former enemies united by a single overwhelming imperative: bring the children home. "Commander," his second officer spoke carefully, "I believe we should consider returning the contracted laborers. The economic loss would be substantial, but manageable. If the humans are genuinely prepared to mobilize, absolutely not. Vashnek slammed his primary appendage against the command console. We will not be dictated to by a species that hasn't even mastered proper FTL travel. This is posturing, nothing more. They want to appear strong, but they're operating from a position of profound weakness. When they realize we won't be intimidated, they'll retreat to their little corner of the galaxy and accept the situation. It's what lesser species always do, but even as he said it, Supreme Commander Vashnek felt something he hadn't experienced in his 40 years of military service. Doubt. 60 hours remained. On Earth, Operation Homecoming was proceeding at a pace that amazed even the humans organizing it. General Vorsek watched the real-time data streams with something approaching awe. The volunteers had been processed, given basic training in zero-gravity combat, and assigned to transport ships. The civilian fleet had been retrofitted with weapons, nothing sophisticated, mostly mining lasers and improvised kinetic accelerators. But weapons nonetheless, sir, one of his aides approached cautiously. The Council has sent another diplomatic envoy. They're requesting we stand down and allow proper channels to tell them we appreciate their concern, Vorsek interrupted without looking up from his displays. And tell them we'll be happy to return to proper channels once our children are home. Until then, Earth is operating under its own authority. Sir, they're threatening sanctions. They're talking about isolating us, cutting off trade, declaring us a rogue state. Now Vorsek did look up. His face was haggard. He hadn't slept in 30 hours, but his eyes were clear. Let me tell you something about humans, Lieutenant. We're not very logical when it comes to our children. We're not cost-benefit analysts. We're not strategic thinkers. We're mammals who evolved protecting our young from things that wanted to eat them. And right now, every single human on this planet has regressed about 300,000 years into fight-or-flight response. Except we don't flight. We never have. That's not how we survive the ice ages and the droughts and the predators. We fight. And we keep fighting until either we're dead or the threat is eliminated. He turned back to his screens. Tell the Council they can impose all the sanctions they want. After we get our kids back, we'll deal with the diplomatic fallout. Assuming there's anything left to deal with, the aide hesitated. Sir, the Vorkan Empire has issued a counter-ultimatum. They're saying if we proceed with hostile action, they'll consider it an act of war and respond with overwhelming force. They're moving battle fleets into position. Their military is 20 times the size of ours, with technology centuries more advanced. Even with the civilian volunteers, we can't win a conventional war. Who said anything about conventional? Vorsek asked quietly. Admiral Rodriguez had been listening to the exchange. Now she spoke up. Sir, with respect, what exactly is our plan here? We're mobilizing millions of people, but once we get them to Vorkan space, what then? Their planetary shields can withstand sustained bombardment from capital ships. Our mining lasers won't even scratch them. Vorsek pulled up a different display. It showed a schematic that made Rodriguez's eyes widen. This is why you never underestimate human creativity when we're properly motivated, he said. Do you know what happens when you take several 100,000 civilian engineers, give them access to every database humanity has ever compiled, and ask them to solve a single problem? Sir, they start thinking outside the box. Way outside. The Vorkan shields are designed to stop high-energy weapons from outside. They're not designed to stop something slow and deliberate from inside. 20 hours ago, a group of graduate students in Mumbai realized something interesting. The Vorkan import millions of tons of raw materials every day. Food, minerals, manufactured goods. All of it passes through their shields because it's on authorized cargo manifests from registered traders. Understanding dawned on Rodriguez's face. We're not going to attack them. Oh, we're going to attack them, Vorsek corrected. Just not in any way they're expecting. We're going to use their own logistics network against them. 12 hours ago, we made contact with every non-aligned trading corporation that does business with the Vorkan, and we made them an offer. Triple rates to transport our cargo into Vorkan space, with a substantial bonus if that cargo happens to include hitchhikers who aren't on the manifest. That's brilliant, sir. But won't the Vorkan scan the cargo? They will, and they'll find exactly what's supposed to be there. But they won't find the humans hiding in shielded compartments that our best engineers have spent the last 2 days developing. Compartments that block biosign scanners, compartments that can support life for days if necessary. We're going to fill their empire with our people, hidden in plain sight, all waiting for a signal. And what happens when you give that signal? Vorsek's smile was cold. Then the Vorkan learn what asymmetric warfare looks like when practiced by a species that has perfected it over thousands of years. We won't destroy their infrastructure. We need it intact for the children. But we will demonstrate that their overwhelming force means nothing when the enemy is already inside your walls, knows your systems better than you do, and isn't constrained by traditional military ethics. Sir, Rodriguez said carefully, that sounds a lot like terrorism, does it? Vorsek met her eyes. Tell me, Admiral, when terrorists took hostages on Earth, what did we call the people who went in to rescue them? Heroes, sir. Exactly. The Vorkan took hostages first. We're just responding appropriately. And if the rest of the galaxy doesn't like our methods, they should have stopped this from happening in the first place. 36 hours remained. On Vorkan Prime, in the processing facility, where the human children were being held. A young boy named David Reeves sat in his cage and counted days in his head. He was 8 years old, or at least he had been when they took him. He wasn't sure exactly how much time had passed since the attack on Perseverance the 3. The Vorkan didn't bother explaining anything to their contracted laborers. David had watched his mother die in the initial bombardment. He'd been dragged onto a ship still screaming her name. The Vorkan handlers had quickly taught him that screaming earned punishment. So he'd learned to be quiet, to be compliant, to do the work they demanded, crawling into tight spaces in the mining tunnels, his small human fingers perfect for delicate extraction work. But he never stopped being angry. And he never stopped watching. He noticed patterns. The guards changed shifts every 12 hours. The facility had 17 cameras, but 3 of them were broken, and nobody had bothered to fix them. The electronic locks on the cages were on a central system that reset every morning at 0600 local time. There was a 3-second window where the system was vulnerable to being manually overridden. He'd learned that by watching a maintenance worker struggle with a malfunctioning lock. David had shared all of this information with the older kids. There were 23 children in this facility alone, ranging from 4-year-old Sophie Chen to 16-year-old Marcus O'Brien. They'd formed their own little resistance cell without even really meaning to. It gave them purpose. It gave them hope. David, Sophie whispered from the next cage, tell me about Earth again. He looked at the little girl, her face still round with baby fat despite the sparse rations. What do you want to hear? The part about the park. With the swings. David closed his eyes and described the park near his house on Perseverance 3, the swings that went so high you felt like you were flying. The slide that was always too hot in the summer. The ice cream truck that came every Thursday afternoon. Simple things, human things. Things the Vorkan couldn't understand or take away. My mom said, Sophie whispered, her voice breaking slightly, that if anything bad ever happened, someone would come for us. She said humans don't leave people behind. David wanted to believe that. He wanted to tell Sophie it was true. But he was 8 years old, and he'd seen his mother torn apart by plasma fire. So he knew that sometimes the adults didn't know what they were talking about. Sometimes nobody came. Sometimes you just survived as best you could and tried not to lose yourself completely. But he didn't say any of that. Instead, he reached through the bars of his cage and managed to touch Sophie's fingertips. The cages were just close enough. She was right, he lied, and hoped somehow it would become true. He didn't know that at that very moment 40 million humans were in transit toward Vorkan space. He didn't know that his father, who he believed had died in the attack, was alive and currently aboard a retrofitted cargo hauler, huddled in a shielded compartment with 70 other volunteers, all of them armed with improvised weapons and united by a single purpose. He didn't know that Earth had declared his birthday a national holiday until he came home. He didn't know that his face was on every news broadcast across human space. He didn't know that strangers had been sending cards and gifts to his grandparents' house, that his story had become the story, the symbol of why humanity was doing the impossible. He was 8 years old and alone and scared, but he was still human, still defiant, still counting the patterns and watching the guards and waiting for his chance, because that's what humans do. We endure, we adapt, we survive, and we never ever stop looking for the way out. 12 hours remained. Supreme Commander Vashnek was discovering that command could be a very lonely position. His intelligence reports were increasingly concerning. Human ships had been detected throughout Vorkan space, or rather, human-registered cargo had been detected. Hundreds of shipments from dozens of neutral trading corporations, all arriving within a narrow time window. All completely legal according to galactic trade regulations. It's too coordinated to be coincidence, his intelligence officer insisted. They're positioning assets. Then find them, Vashnek ordered. Scan every cargo container. Search every warehouse. If there are humans hiding in our territory, root them out. Sir, we've conducted scans. The cargo manifests match the contents. We're not detecting any human biological signatures, but what? Sir, there's something else. We've been monitoring human communications. They're not encrypted. They're broadcasting openly like they want us to hear. And the content is disturbing. The intelligence officer played an audio file. It was a human voice, calm and conversational, speaking in Vorkan dialect. This is message for any Vorkan listening. My name is Sarah Reeves. 23 years ago, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy named David. I taught him to read. I bandaged his scraped knees. I sang him to sleep when he had nightmares. 3 months ago, you killed my husband and you took my son. I'm told I should hate you for that. I'm told I should want revenge. But here's what you need to understand. I don't hate you. I pity you. There was a pause, and when the voice continued, it was filled with something more unsettling than anger, a kind of serene certainty. You see, you've never had children. The Vorkan breed in hatcheries, assign parental duties by committee. You don't understand the bond between a human parent and their child. You think you took captives. What you actually did was create 40 million enemies, who will never stop, never give up, and never forgive. We're not coming for revenge. We're coming because the universe itself cannot continue properly until our children are home. And we will reshape reality if necessary to make that happen. Another voice joined in, then another, and another. Thousands of voices, each telling a story about a child. Some spoke in grief, others in rage. A few were eerily calm, but all of them conveyed the same message. We're coming and nothing you do will stop us. It's psychological warfare, Vashnek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Sir, it's more than that. They're getting inside our heads. The broadcasts are constant. Every frequency, every channel. Our civilian population is hearing these stories. There have been protests. Some Vorkan are questioning whether the economic benefits of the contracted labor program are worth antagonizing an entire species that seems to have no sense of self-preservation. Opinion doesn't matter. Vashnek snapped. I command the military, and the military will follow orders. But even as he said it, he felt control slipping away. The humans hadn't fired a shot. They hadn't destroyed a single ship or invaded a single world, and yet somehow impossibly they were winning. How could you fight an enemy that didn't follow any logical, strategic doctrine? An enemy that should have calculated the odds and surrendered, but instead mobilized their entire civilization for a war they couldn't possibly win. The answer Vashnek was beginning to realize was that you couldn't. Not conventionally, sir. His second officer spoke quietly. Perhaps we should consider their ultimatum. Return the laborers, avoid the conflict. We can claim it was a magnanimous gesture to a grieving species. Save face while diffusing the situation, and look weak to every other species in the galaxy. Show that threats and ultimatums work against the Vorkan Empire. We'd have every minor species making demands, claiming humanitarian concerns. Vashnek's mandibles clacked in agitation. No, we hold firm. Let the humans come. Let them break themselves against our shields and our fleets. They'll learn that sentiment is no match for military superiority. The intelligence officer and second officer exchanged glances. Neither spoke their thoughts aloud. That perhaps their commander had fundamentally misunderstood the situation. That military superiority meant nothing against an opponent who didn't care about casualties, logistics, or even victory in the traditional sense. The humans had only one objective: retrieve their children. Everything else was negotiable, including their own survival. That kind of enemy was more dangerous than any dreadnought. 0 hour. The signal went out across Vorkan space simultaneously. It was a simple data burst, easily dismissed as random noise by anyone not listening for it. But 40 million humans heard it clearly. It was a lullaby. an old Earth song that parents had sung to children for generations. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." And with that signal, the Vorkan Empire discovered what asymmetric warfare truly meant. In the capital city of Vorkan Prime, shipping containers that had been sitting in warehouses for the past 11 hours suddenly opened from the inside. Humans emerged, not soldiers in uniform, but ordinary people armed with mining equipment and improvised weapons. They moved with purpose toward their designated targets: communication hubs, power stations, transportation centers. They didn't try to hold these positions. They simply disabled them, efficiently and simultaneously, then melted back into the urban landscape. Within 15 minutes, Vorkan Prime had lost 43% of its communications infrastructure and 67% of its power grid. The planetary shields remained active. The humans carefully avoided those systems, but coordination between military units became nearly impossible. In orbital stations throughout the system, cargo that had been loaded for routine maintenance supplies revealed its true nature. Thousands of humans emerged from shielded compartments, many of them former military operators, all of them motivated by a fury that burned colder and cleaner than any sun. They moved through the stations methodically, securing critical systems, locking down hangar bays and broadcasting a single message: "We're here for the children." Interfere and face consequences. On 17 Vorkan industrial worlds, similar operations unfolded simultaneously. It was coordinated chaos on an unprecedented scale. The humans didn't try to conquer, they paralyzed. Every action was calculated to disable but not destroy. After all, the children would need functioning infrastructure when they were recovered. Supreme Commander Vashnek watched his orderly empire dissolve into chaos on the command displays. Reports flooded in from every sector. Human infiltrators were everywhere. Defensive systems that should have been impregnable had been bypassed using social engineering and inside knowledge. The enemy wasn't at the gates, they were already inside, moving through his empire like a virus through a body. "How?" he demanded. "How did they get so many operatives into position without us detecting them?" "Sir," his intelligence officer said, his voice hollow with shock, "they used our own prejudices against us. We kept scanning for military threats, warships, weapons signatures, trained operatives. We never thought to look for civilians hiding in shipping containers. We assumed they'd follow conventional invasion doctrine. But they didn't invade. They infiltrated. Every cargo shipment over the past day contained humans. Hundreds of thousands of them, all willing to spend hours in cramped, shielded boxes just to get into position. This is madness. No species would tolerate such conditions. They're humans, sir. Apparently, some of their ancient warriors used to hide in small spaces for days waiting to ambush enemies. They called it guerrilla warfare. They perfected it over thousands of years of conflicts, and now they've applied those principles on an interstellar scale. Vashnek's world was collapsing. His military, so vast and powerful in conventional terms, was useless against an enemy that was already behind their lines, that didn't hold territory, that struck and vanished like ghosts. "Order all forces to converge on the processing facilities," he commanded. "If we can't stop their operatives, at least we can secure the assets they came for." It was the wrong order. It was exactly what the humans had been waiting for him to do. At Processing Facility 7 on Vorkan Prime, David Reeves was counting guards when something extraordinary happened. The lights flickered just for a moment, and in that moment he heard a sound he'd almost forgotten, a human voice speaking English, coming from the facility's intercom system. "All children remain calm. Stay in your cages. Help is here." Sophie started crying. Marcus was on his feet, pressing against the bars of his cage. All around the facility, the children were reacting, hope and fear and disbelief warring on their faces. The guards were reacting too, scrambling to lock down the facility. But they were too late. The doors, all of them simultaneously unlocked. And through those doors came humans. They weren't soldiers, though some moved with military precision. They were ordinary people, men and women ranging from their 20s to their 60s, wearing makeshift armor cobbled together from mining equipment, carrying weapons that looked like they'd been assembled in someone's garage. But their faces told a different story. These were people who had crossed the galaxy, hidden in cargo containers, risked everything just to reach this moment. The Vorkan guards tried to resist. They were trained warriors, each worth 3 humans in combat. But the humans didn't fight fair. They used stunners set to maximum charge. They used flashbangs designed for mining operations. They used numbers and ferocity and absolute refusal to stop. David watched through the bars of his cage as a middle-aged woman with grey in her hair took down a Vorkan guard twice her size. She was crying as she fought, screaming something in a language David didn't recognize. Later, he would learn she'd lost her own daughter in the attack, and this was as close as she could get to bringing her baby home. Within 5 minutes, the guards were subdued. The humans moved through the cages with practiced efficiency, breaking locks, gathering children, checking for injuries. Medical personnel, identified by red crosses painted on their improvised armor, began triaging the kids, and then David saw him, his father. John Reeves, alive, standing in the doorway like something from a dream. For a moment, neither of them moved. John's face was a mask of controlled emotion, controlled because if he let go, he'd collapse. David's mind was trying to process impossibilities. His father was dead. The attack had killed everyone. "This couldn't be real, David," John whispered. The spell broke. David was moving, climbing out of the cage, running. His father caught him, lifting him up like he was 4 years old instead of 8. And then they were both crying, and John was saying, I've got you, I've got you. You're safe now, I'm here, I'm so sorry. I'm here." Around them, similar reunions were happening. Parents and children, siblings. Some of the rescuers had no family here, they'd lost everyone, but they cried with joy anyway, because these were humanity's children, and that made them everyone's children. How? David managed to ask through his tears. "How did you get here?" John set him down but kept his hands on David's shoulders, like he needed the physical contact to believe this was real. "How? Son, did you really think we wouldn't come? Did you think Earth would just accept this? But they said humans were weak, that we only had a few ships, that we couldn't—" "They forgot something important about humans," John interrupted, smiling through his tears. "We're really, really stubborn, especially about our kids. Now come on, we need to get you out of here." Throughout Vorkan space, similar operations were concluding successfully. The humans had hit every processing facility simultaneously, overwhelming guards through sheer numbers and desperate courage. 217 children were being recovered. Most were physically unharmed. The Vorkan had at least understood that damaged goods were less valuable. The psychological damage would take years to heal, but they were alive. They were being held by their families,